Aryan invasion theory, the fabricated myth. There is a Sanskrit grammar named Amarkosh which says Mahakula Kulinarya Sarva Sajjan Sandbhava, which means a person who comes from a good family who has a good behavior and has good deeds is known as Arya. Rigved uses the word Arya for a good person who has good habits, good behavior and good deeds. Similarly, Mahatma Buddha refers his religion as Arya Dharma. He says one who kills some creature is not a true Arya. It is written in Ramayana that Arya serve Samaseva Sadaiv Priyadarshana, which means a person who considers everyone equal is an Arya. This discussion clarifies that the word Arya, according to our Hindu scriptures, corresponds to a person having good behavior and good deeds. This is similar as in English we use Mr. or Sir, in French we use Monsieur, and in Hindi we use Shri or Shriman. It differs from what has been written in our history books that Aryan invasion took place in 1500 BC. That means noble people, good people came and invaded India. How is this possible? Further, there is no hometown being mentioned anywhere in any of our or their written scriptures. This is also very surprising. Friends, let us try to understand the actual motives of Europeans in rendering this theory of Aryan invasion. French historian Leon Poliakov, in his book The Aryan Myth, writes that the Aryan invasion theory was planned to give the Christian Europe an identity that will be free from the taint of Judaism. As we know, Bible consists of two parts. One is Old Testament and other is New Testament, which was written after the birth of Christianity. The Old Testament relates Christianity to its Judaic heritage. Actually, a section of European Christians wanted to get separated from Judaic heritage and wanted to associate themselves with the Indian culture and civilization. The rise of Adolf Hitler in Germany and massacre of millions of Jews after that was a consequence of this denial of European Christians from their Judaic heritage. They wanted to cynically prove their Aryan heritage and common ancestry with India. American archaeologist and anthropologist Jim G. Shaffer writes, many scholars such as Kent and Herder began to draw analogies between the cultures of ancient India and the West in an attempt to separate Western Europe from their Judaic heritage. Many scholars were convinced that the origin of Western culture was to be found in ancient India. It clarifies to us that what was the actual reason why Aryan invasion theory was invented. However, the motive of British was a little bit different. They actually wanted to use the theory to prove that some group of invaders across around 1500 BC came from Central Asia and invaded north of India. They defeated the original inhabitants, Indus Valley civilization people, and converted them to Vedic faith and pushed them in the south. Therefore, they wanted to draw division between the North India and the South India. The real father of this theory was Thomas Babington Macaulay, who was in India from 1834 to 1838. He was first the secretary to the Board of Control of British East India Company during the Prime Ministership of Lord Grey. He came to India in 1834 as a law member of Governor General's Council. He writes in Minutes on Indian Education of February 1835, urging Lord William Bentinck, then Governor General, to reform secondary education on utilitarian lines to deliver useful learning, a phrase that Macaulay was synonymous with Western culture. He writes, I feel that it is impossible for us with our limited means to attempt to educate the body of the people. We must at present do our best to form a class which may be interpreters between us and the millions whom we govern, a class of persons Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect. To that class we may leave it to refine the vernacular dialects of the country, to enrich these dialects with terms of science borrowed from the Western nomenclature, and to render them by degrees fit vehicles for conveying knowledge to the great mass of the population. Macaulay could not have achieved this goal on his own, and therefore he needed someone who can prove to the Indians that their scriptures, their religion is inferior to Christianity. He He found a person, Friedrich Max Müller, who was a German by origin. He was offered by East India Company a salary of £200 per year or £4 per page at a time when the salary of a professor in Britain was only £69 per year. Therefore, he was given roughly 3 times the salary. It is documented that he was given an amount of £10,000 for translation of about 50 Hindu scriptures including Vedas. He fixes a time slot of 1200 BC for the writing of original Rig Veda. He accepted the offer of East India Company to translate the Hindu scriptures in order to do some service to the Christianity. This he has written in his own words. Max Muller wrote to his mother, 5 Newman's Row, Lincoln's Inn Field, on April 15, 1847. I can yet hardly believe that I have at last got what I have struggled for so long. I am to hand over to the company ready for press 50 sheets each year. For this I have asked £200 a year, £4 a sheet. They have been considering the matter since December, and it was only yesterday that it was officially settled. In fact, I spent a delightful time, and when I reached London yesterday, I found all settled, and I could say and feel, thank God. Now I must at once send my thanks and set to work to earn the first £100. Max Muller wrote to Chevalier Bunsen, 55 St. John Street, Oxford, on August 25, 1856. I should like to live for 10 years quite quietly and learn the language, try to make friends, and then see whether I was fit to take part in a work by means of which the old mischief of Indian priestcraft could be overthrown and the way opened for the entrance of simple Christian teaching. Whatever finds root in India soon overshadows the whole of Asia. Max Muller wrote to Dean of St. Paul, Dr. Milman, Stoughton House, Bournemouth, on February 26, 1867. I am myself the strongest believer in the growth of Christianity in India. There is no country so ripe for Christianity as India, and yet the difficulties seem enormous. Max Muller wrote to his wife on December 9, 1867. It took only 200 years for us to Christianize the whole of Africa. But even after 400 years, India eludes us. I have come to realize that it is Sanskrit which has enabled India to do so, and to break it, I have decided to learn Sanskrit. Let us discuss the findings of Indus Valley Civilization. The British, in the leadership of John Marshall, excavated the sites of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro primarily between 1924 to 1931. They found that there was a civilization in India which was trading through sea route and was advanced and expert in mathematics, geometry, and astronomy. They had developed the knowledge of sewage system. They also suggested that Aryan invaders from Central Asia came around 1500 BC and destroyed this civilization and forced the natives of this civilization to Vedic religion. Actually, Indus Valley Civilization theory should have been rejected outrightly because of several drawbacks it has. Let us discuss these drawbacks. Drawback number 1. First of the drawback is that Aryan had a very developed astronomical and geometrical knowledge. They have mentioned the position of constellations and stars at a number of points in their scriptures. The position of stars and constellations in Rig Veda and the other Vedas tell us that Rig Veda was written around 3700 BC. Therefore, how can Arya could have come invaded India in 1500 BC and written Rig Veda in 1200 BC as has been proposed by Max Muller? Drawback number 2. Second drawback of Aryan invasion theory is that Saraswati River, discovered by satellite pictures, according to NASA, has disappeared in 1900 BC. Therefore, how a river flowing 400 years before Aryan invasion of India finds mention at several points in Rig Veda? Drawback number 3. The finding of home seal in Indus Valley civilization excavations is another setback for the proposed theory. Home seal description is mentioned in Rigveda chapter 4, Bhagavad Gita chapter 15 and Kathopanishad. It is written in Rigveda about Om seal that your abode is the Ashwat tree and your dwellings is made of its leaves. Drawback number 4. We find Vedic yogic position in certain seals found in Indus Valley civilization excavations. Drawback number 5. We find certain seals in Indus Valley excavations with swastik symbol on them. This quite clearly relate with Vedas and Vedic scriptures. Therefore, the two civilizations were same. Drawback number 6. A section of European scholars wanted to prove that scriptures like Vedas cannot be written by illiterate and backward Indians. Therefore, they proposed that their ancestors from Europe came and invaded India 1500 BC and were known as Aryan. They then developed Sanskrit here and wrote Vedas. However, Sanskrit is a very advanced language compared to Latin and Greek. If we see, for example, there is a word Dev which transformed to Theo in Greek and Dew in French. There is a word Agni in Sanskrit which became Ignis in Greek and ignite in English. Similarly, there is one word Taru in Sanskrit which became tree in English. There are numerous such words which are original Sanskrit words and got distorted in going to Greek and to Latin and in English and French. There is no exceptions in Sanskrit like silent words, pneumonia, no, etc. Sanskrit strictly follow basic rules. Sanskrit is same in speaking and writing. Therefore, how it is possible that linguistically lesser advanced people are developing the more advanced language? Therefore, there are nothing like Aryan invasion. Sanskrit was developed by the inhabitants of India and then Sanskrit words transformed to words in European languages. Sanskrit words transformed to words in European languages and the languages world over. Drawback number 7. Historians who support Indus Valley civilization and Aryan invasion theory argue that there is a mention of horse in Vedas. However, any picture of horse was not found in excavations of Indus Valley civilization sites. The simple answer to this query was been given by Sri Aurobindo in his articles about the study of Rigveda. As an example, there is one hymn 1.9 2.14 in Rigveda. It is about the Rishi prayer to the dawn. गोमद विरवद देहि रत्नाम uso ashvavat. The translation done by Max Muller and other Western translators say that dawn brings cow and horses. How can dawn bring cow and horses? The actual meaning for go and ashv should be light and energy and not cow and horses has been taken by Western translators. Therefore, the translation should be the dawn brings light and energy. Such irrelevant translations of Vedas have led to the presence of horse as a primary household animal associated with Aryans. The references regarding the work of Sri Aurobindo and other scholars are as listed here. Drawback number 8. The excavations in Sinoli and Rakhigadi has totally busted the Aryan invasion theory. There were findings of horses and chariots in Sinoli. Sinoli is a village in Bagpat district of Uttar Pradesh, a northern state in India, and finds mention in Bharata also. It was one of the 5 villages which Lord Shri Krishna had tried to negotiate for Pandavas from Duryodhana for the peaceful settlement of the dispute. The finding of horses and chariots in Sinoli shows that horses were known to the people at the time of Mahabharata. The timing of Mahabharata is again debatable. There are mentions of the positions of constellations and stars in Mahabharata which show that the Battle of Mahabharata was fought around 3102 BC, much before the proposed Aryan invasion. Drawback number 9. Few skeletons were found in excavations near Rakhigadi in Hisar district of Haryana, a northern state of India. The skeletons does not possess Central Asian gene R1A1, which shows that natives in India at that time did not possess that gene. Drawback number 10. Historians who support Aryan invasion theory point out that North Indians and South Indians are different in their skin color. South Indians are dark in skin color, whereas North Indians are fairer. However, this is not true. We can find numerous North Indians who are also dark in color, and numerous South Indians who are fairer. Therefore, this does not seem to be always true. World famous Luigi Luca Cavalli Sforza, who was a population geneticist who taught at the University of Parma, the University of Pavia, and then at Stanford University, rejected Aryan invasion theory. According to him, the Indian population derives largely from the same genetic heritage and has received negligible gene flow from external regions. The opinion makes total difference and proves beyond doubt that Aryan invasion theory is fake. It was planned for different purposes. British fabricated the myth of Aryan invasion theory to declare North Indians as descendants of an Aryan race who defeated and pushed Indus Valley original inhabitants to South India and forced them to accept Vedic religion. They tried to establish two narratives through this fake Aryan invasion theory. Firstly, original citizens of India are 1500 BC colonizers. Therefore, they have no moral right to question British for colonizing India. Secondly, South Indians, Dravidians are old slaves of North Indians, Aryans. Therefore, they should throw away Vedic religion and adopt Christianity. Also, South Indians should not help North Indians 1500 BC colonizers in their fight against British, who have come for the salvation of South Indians. One will ask why Aryan invasion theory needs to be discussed now. The reason behind this discussion is to learn about a parallel theory from the history of Rwanda. Rwanda is an African country with a population of about 1.4 crore. It has a population of about 85% of a tribe Hutu, about 14% are Tutsis, and about 1% is Twa tribe. Rwanda was a colony of Germany since 1897 as a part of German East Africa. Belgium took control of Rwanda in 1916. Both European colonists ran the administration through the Rwanda king and perpetuated a pro-Tutsi policy. The Hutu population revolted in 1959 and ultimately established an independent Hutu-dominated republic in 1962. Hutu activists began killing Tutsi and destroying their houses, forcing more than 1 lakh people to seek refuge in neighboring countries. Tutsis formed an army outside Rwanda named as Rwandan Patriotic Front (RPF). Juvenal Habariyama took power in Rwanda in military coup in 1973. However, pro-Hutu discrimination continued, although on a reduced scale. Rwandan Patriotic Front (RPF) or Tutsi invaded northern Rwanda in 1990 and battle continued, and eventually a peace agreement was signed in 1993. It was on 6 April 1994 the plane carrying the Rwandan President Juvenal Habyarimana and President of Burundi was shot down near Kigali airport, killing the President Juvenal Habyarimana. The total blame was put on Rwandan Patriotic Front (RPF) and led to further killing of about 8 million people in next 100 days. Most of them were Tutsi and rest were politically moderate Hutus. Actually, this conflict between two communities was scripted by the colonial powers. The colonial powers before 1959 authored the textbooks of Rwandan history and taught these books in school curriculum of Rwanda. They taught them that Tutsi were outsiders. They invaded Hutu majority Rwanda and enslaved them in distant past. This was taught for about 20-30 years. The consequence was the conflict between two communities, and that ultimately led to the genocide of Tutsi. The percentage of Tutsi as a result of this genocide reduced from 14% to 10%. This genocide was ultimately stopped when Rwandan Patriotic Front RPF entered Kigali, the capital of Rwanda, and captured. Aryan invasion theory was a similar theory proposed and written in our history books by British historians. Aryan invasion theory was a historical fraud done to divide Indian population on regional and racial lines. Any Aryan race never existed in the world. This theory is being taught to us for last 100 years by British and later by Congress governments. This divides us on caste lines of Aryan and non-Aryans. This also divides us on regional lines of Aryan North Indian and native Indus Valley South Indian. There is no truth in this theory of Aryan invasion of India. These all discussions show that there was nothing like Aryan invasion. The Sanskrit was developed here itself and Vedas were written near the bank of Saraswati river. Aryan is anyone who is a noble person. History books taught in schools need to be free from distortions like Aryan invasion theory to avoid Rwanda-like genocide in India in future. Therefore, it is the urgent need of the hour that this kind of a story should be stopped to be taught in our schools immediately.